Hello everyone, this is Professor Sexton with a video lecture for your last formal paper of the semester, which will be paper number 3. Paper number 3 is going to be the most difficult paper that we've done this semester because paper number 1 and paper number 2 have been very personal essays where you've been writing about your own experiences and your own insights. Whereas paper 3 is you're writing about 2 essays that we read, and furthermore, you're writing comparison and contrast on those 2 essays. So it's going to call for you to do a lot more than what you've done in paper 1 and in paper 2. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to share the paper assignment with you, and waiting for it to load. And I'm going to read the entire paper assignment to you and then stop at particular points where it might be useful for me to get more information. So for your third paper, you would do a comparison and or contrast essay on the Ngugi Wa Thong's Decolonizing the Mind and Richard Rodriguez Aria, a memoir of a bilingual childhood. The common topic of both essays is the relationship between language and identity. So this is what you're writing about, the relationship between language and identity. While Ngugi and Rodriguez discuss similar points in their essays, they often have different views on these points and on the relationship between language and identity. So your aim in this paper is to analyze Ngugi's and Rodriguez's view on the relationship between language and identity. Before you begin, you need to have a clear understanding of what their views are. So here, what you may want to do is you may want to go back and reread the essays and rewatch the video lectures. You then need to select at least 2 common points that both essays discuss. So while you are free to choose your own 2, I'm offering you a few suggestions. So in both Ngugi's and Rodriguez's essay, they talk about their childhood experiences, they talk about their educational experiences, they talk about their view of harmony in language, and their view on the relationship between public and private language. You may use any or none of these suggestions, and also want you to know using the suggestions that I've given here has no bearing or effect on your grade. So let me just kind of recap here. So for this essay, what you're doing is you're comparing and you're contrasting these 2 essays and how Ngugi and Rodriguez view the connection between language and identity. In order to do this, you're going to choose 2 common points that both of the authors write about, such as childhood experiences or the view of harmony in language, because both Ngugi and Rodriguez talk about these issues in their essays. But Ngugi's childhood experiences are different than Rodriguez's childhood experiences. And so what you're going to do is you're analyzing their childhood experiences, you're arguing how their childhood experiences influence their view on the relationship between language and identity. So one of the things that you need to do at the very beginning, before you even begin writing the essay, is to have a clear indication of how Ngugi views the relationship between language and identity and how Rodriguez view the relationship between language and identity. Then how does their childhood experiences support that view, or how do their view of harmony and language support that view is what you're doing. In your analysis, you need to show how the points you've selected work to explain the author's view on the relationship between language and identity. Now, for comparison and contrast papers, there are 2 organizational formats that you may use. One is called point by point, and the other one is called subject by subject. With point by point, you organize the essay by your points. So like for instance, if you decide to do childhood experiences, educational experiences, and harmony in languages, you do childhood experiences and Ngugi, then you switch to Rodriguez. You do educational experiences and Ngugi, then you switch to Rodriguez. You do harmony in language, then you do Ngugi, and then you switch to Rodriguez. This will probably end up being 6 body paragraphs, because you'll have one on Ngugi, another paragraph on Rodriguez for childhood experiences, then another one on Ngugi, another one on Rodriguez for educational experiences. But keep in mind, a paragraph should be somewhere between 5 to 7 sentences. So if your paragraphs are like 3 sentences for Ngugi and 3 sentences for Rodriguez, you can kind of combine that into 1 paragraph. So this is the point by point option. If you were to do subject by subject, You'll discuss everything about Ngugi first. So you talk about his childhood experiences, his educational experiences, his harmony and language. Then you'll switch and you'll do Rodriguez, his childhood. And as usual, I don't know why it does this. It stopped sharing the screen. So here we go, we're back. With Rodriguez, you would do childhood experiences, education experiences, harmony, and language. So if you did the subject by subject, you do everything about Ngugi first and then Rodriguez. My personal preference is for point by point. This is what I prefer. However, it doesn't really matter to me whether you do point by point or subject by subject. All that matters to me is that you're consistent. So whatever one you start off with is the one that you do all the way through. For this paper, unlike the last two, you'll need to use direct quotations from both the essays and include accurate parenthetical citation. So the midterm exam that you just taken goes over how to do parenthetical citations and how to use quotations. So that part 2 of the midterm exam is exactly what you'll be doing here to use the quotations accurately in your essay. Let me move on. What I've also done here is giving you information on how to structure your introduction. So since this paper is about language and identity, your introduction needs to begin with a general introduction to the relationship between language and identity. And here, if you want to, you can give your own personal view, right? But then what you'll want to do, you'll want to transition to Ngugi and Rodriguez's view in the relationship between language and identity. So you want to state what Ngugi sees, and Ngugi sees that there is a connection between language and identity, whereas Rodriguez sees that there is not. You want to state what the individual views are, and then you want to list the 2 common points that you're going to use in your essay to analyze that. So if you're going to use childhood experiences and this relationship between harmony and language, your introduction needs to state that that's what you're going to do. Also in the introduction, you need to give the author's full names in the titles of the essays and quotation marks. So if you go back to this first page here, you will want this Ngugi wa Thon's Decolonizing the Mind, and Richard Rodriguez Aria, A Memoir of a Bilingual Childhood. Their full names, complete titles need to be in the introduction. Once you've introduced them in the introduction, then you'll want to just use the author's last name. And even though Ngugi's last name is actually Wa Thong, I always use Ngugi. So feel free to use Ngugi instead of Wa Thong when you quote him. For the body paragraphs, be sure to follow one of the formats above and to include direct quotations from the 2 essays that are properly introduced, cited, and explained. So once again, this is if you do childhood experiences and I don't know, harmony and language. And then for the conclusion, your conclusion needs to state and explain your own view on the relationship between language and identity. So for this conclusion, instead of just summarizing what Ngugi and Rodriguez have stated, you're now giving your own view. So essentially what you're doing is you're stating whether you agree more with Ngugi or if you agree more with Rodriguez. Also, feel free to fall in the middle. Say like you believe somewhat of Ngugi and you believe somewhat of Rodriguez. But whatever you do for the conclusion, you need to explain your own personal reasons for holding your view. So for the conclusion, don't just recite what Ngugi or Rodriguez said. You need to give your own viewpoints here. Your paper needs a title. I know that for a number of the papers, you've been doing like paper 1 or paper 2, but for this paper, you need a title that reflects what your essay is going to be about. So, I mean, it's about language and identity, but what exactly are you analyzing about language and identity? So you want to do something like that. In terms of MLA format, this is how you do the documentation for your paper. So on the first page, in the left-hand margin, you give your first name and your last name, and then your last name and the page number. My name, Professor Sexton, the course, English 101-FNT8, the due date in European form, the number date, 19, spell out the month, November, give the full year 2020 2022, and then give your title. And then for every subsequent page, what you're doing is you're just giving your last name and the page number. Um, Also, what I didn't indicate here, but for everyone who gets this right on their paper, you're going to get 10 bonus points. And I did this with paper 2 as well. So if all of that is correct, I'm just going to add 10 bonus points, which will be added to your lowest possible, your lowest grade at the end of the semester. Your paper needs to be typed in double space. Try to use 12-point times New Roman or Arial font type. Even though there's not a required page limit, you want to try to fall somewhere between 3 to 5 pages. And if you would like for me to read an outline or a draft of this paper, you need to email it to me either as a Microsoft Word, Google Doc, or Pages document by Saturday, November 12th. That gives me time to read, comment on it, and get it back to you. Due date for this paper is November 19, submitted to Blackboard by 11:59 p.m. Let me backtrack with drafts and outlines. A draft or an outline, I'm going to stop sharing. A draft or an outline doesn't have to be complete. So don't think that in order to send me a draft of the paper, you have to have the whole paper written. You don't. If you have just the introduction and the first body paragraphs, you can send me that. You can just, send me an outline. It's like, this is what I'm thinking about doing for my introduction. This is what I'm doing for my body paragraphs. This is what I'm thinking doing for my conclusion. I can comment on any of those things. So the outline and the draft doesn't have to be complete. But please email it to me. So do not submit the draft or the outline to Blackboard for the paper 2 tab, because I'm just going to assume that's your final paper and I'm not going to look at it. So if you want me to read a draft or outline, email that to me ahead of time. As I said before, this is the most difficult paper that you will do in the class because it's involving a lot. It's not personal. It's asking you to analyze 2 essays. It's asking you to follow a very tight structure. But do keep in mind, it is your last formal paper. The reason why it's coming so early in the semester, it gives me time to give it back to you. And this paper also can be revised. So there is an opportunity to revise this paper. But if you have any questions about this paper assignment, please reach out, please email me, let me know. And if you want me to read drafts or outlines of the paper assignment, I'm more than happy to do that. As I said before, try to get those to me by November 12th, so it gives me enough time to read and comment on them and to get them back to you. Okay, hope everyone's doing well, and I'll see you in the next video lecture. Bye.